Good afternoon. In this video, I want to look at a story in the Old Testament of the healing of Naaman, the leper, the Syrian, and it's mentioned again in Luke 4:27 by the Lord, pointing to the Jews that God does deal with Gentiles and bless them when the Jews are out of fellowship. But what's interesting about this story, and it's overlooked by many people, is where did all this begin? Where did all this process begin? By the time you end the story, you have kings writing to other kings, and King of Israel getting upset, and saying, this is so the king of Syria is trying to get me to provoke me to war, and Naaman going to Elisha and getting healed. So you say, well, how did it begin? It began with a little maid and the faith of a little maid and her word of faith to her mistress. She'd been taken out of Israel and put in this position, just like the book of Esther. God wanted her in that spot, took her out of Israel, put her in that spot. And in that area, in that home, her faith was expressed. It's no accident that Naaman had leprosy. This was going to glorify God. And her faith, her compassion, resulted in Naaman going to Elisha and getting healed. But the king of Israel didn't have the same faith. Look at 2 Kings chapter 5. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. Leprosy was hopeless. There was no cure for leprosy. That's why the issue where leprosy is a metaphor for sin. All mankind is born as lepers, hopeless, incurable. That's why they need the Lord. The only the Lord can cure leprosy, based on this issue of the metaphors being used here. So leprosy was incurable. There's no hope. Now the little maid is going to come up and give hope and say where Naaman can go and get deliverance from this hopeless condition. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captives out of the land of Israel, a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. Verse 3, and she said unto her mistress, would God my Lord were with the prophet, and that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. Now notice at verse 3, notice the confidence, how sure she is. There's no question, maybe he'd go there, maybe this would happen. She knows this is a fact. And she said unto her mistress, verse 3, going back again, verse 3, would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. He would. That's faith. That's a believer being taken out of one area and put in another area for a particular purpose that God had for her. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. This word got back up to the king. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 pieces of gold and 10 changes of raiment. This is how man thinks. Man thinks there's always a price. And God says, no price here. Elijah doesn't even take anything from Naaman. There's no price. It's grace. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman, my servant, to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And the king of Israel said, what are you talking about? I can't recover this guy from leprosy? This is just an attempt to start a war with me. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes and said, am I God to kill and make alive, that this man doth send unto me recover a man of his leprosy? This one little maid is causing this disruption in two kingdoms now because of her word of faith. This is how God operates. He doesn't operate in big things, he operates in small things. And he turns the world upside down. He turns the world upside down. This insignificant little maid, her faith is turning up two kingdoms now, getting them all riled up about curing leprosy and bringing God into the issue and glorifying the God of Israel. Israel is supposed to be a witness to the world. When they stopped doing that, the world became witness. Other Gentile nations became witnesses to Israel. That's how the issue of the gift of tongues in the book of Acts was going on. That was the testimony to the Jews that their time was ending. And that's mentioned in the book of Isaiah chapter 6. So this is what's going on here. But the idea is that Israel is supposed to glorify God. And that's why you had the Queen of Sheba going to Israel. And that's where you find God, in Israel. So now Naaman is going to go to Israel and hopefully find the cure for his leprosy, based on the word of one little maid. Verse 8. So he says here, I've recovered a man from his leprosy. Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. He thinks this is just a pretext to start a war. And it was so when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there was a prophet in Israel. The king didn't believe, but the little maid did. The king was not trusting in the prophet, but the little maid was. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come up again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away and said, Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. He's waiting for some different type of way of healing. And when that didn't happen, he got upset. Fortunately, his aid came to the rescue. And verse 12, and Abner and Phabor, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel. May on that washing Naaman be clean. So he turned and went away in a rage. Now, see again, he's thinking in human terms. He thinks the water is an issue, and not the obedience. That's the whole point. He thinks, well, our water is just as good as the Israel water. And the servants came near. See, servants came near, fortunately, and spake unto him and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather than when he saith to thee, wash and be clean? So if he had said, some great thing, you would have done it. This is a simple thing. And it's just requiring obedience. You're trusting what the prophet says to do, and you're doing it. Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the sayings of the man of God. And his flesh came again unto him, came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. That's the purpose of this. Purpose of all this, starting with one word of faith from a little maid, was to get the realization that this great man of Syria, that the true God was the God of Israel. And that's where he was. Now, therefore, I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. Now it's offering the payment. Now, I should say, no, I'm not taking any payment, because this is for the glory of God. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And then Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee? Why? Because it had to be made sure there's no grace. Now, Elisha, you can see by this story, Elisha's servant takes it and sneaks on it. That's a covenant. And changes. Still covenant. And he tries to lie to Elisha. He knows Elisha's the prophet. He gets the leprosy. And Naaman says, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules burden of earth, for thy servants will henceforth offer thee neither burnt offerings nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In this thing, Lord, pardon thy servant, that when thy master goeth into the house of women to worship there, and he leaneth on the hand, I bow myself in the house of women. When I bow myself down in the house of women, the Lord pardon my servant in this thing. He's not, you have to still go with that ritual going in there, into that fourth temple. Verse 19, he said unto him, go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. And then it goes into the story of the servant, Elijah's servant, whose covenants. But when you read that story, remember where it starts in verse 3. A little maid's faith. Tears up 2 kingdoms. God doesn't use the great things. He uses the small things to show he's a great God. And you notice Elijah didn't take any money, because it had to be shown to be grace. This was not done for money. This was done to glorify God. So there's principles there you have to always keep in mind when you're reading these things. And we want to read the Old Testament, not for doctrinal content, but to learning, understanding principles. And we see here the issue of no matter where God puts you, there's a purpose for where God has put you. And you can be used. And every Christian has a spiritual gift to be used. Every Christian. And wherever you are, whatever place God has placed you in the body, it's the issue of 1 Corinthians, the body issue, the analogies of 1 Corinthians 12, the body analogies. Every part of the body is important. So you might not have a gift that's visible to the rest of the world, like, preaching and teaching, things like that. But your gift was no less important. That little maid was taken out of her home and placed in this other home by God, put in Naaman's home, just like Joseph. Same analogy we see in Joseph. He was there put in there for a reason, to save Egypt, and then to save Israel, bring in Israel, the Jews, the 12 tribes, to bring them in and save them during this period. So God will take you and use you if you let Him, if you trust in Him. And many things you're not going to know what you did until you get to heaven. The little maid probably doesn't know what she did. As a result, obviously the issue of Naaman coming back, and what consequence. But all the other stuff going on, she probably wasn't even aware of. Going to, the king of Israel, freed resulting in war, provoking for war. But keep in mind in the idea that wherever you are, your faith can be used. And that's what this story is telling you. That's what we learn from a little maid who had great faith. Amen. Thank you.